There is a specific kind of falling apart that does not feel like falling apart. It feels like failure. It feels like proof that something is fundamentally wrong with you. It feels like everyone else has figured something out that you have not. It feels like the life you are building is quietly dissolving from the inside, and no matter how hard you try to hold it together, pieces of it keep slipping through your hands. You are tired in a way that sleep does not fix. You have lost interest in things that used to feel meaningful. The version of yourself you spent years becoming feels hollow, like a coat that no longer fits. And somewhere underneath all of that, there is a quieter voice that does not know what to make of any of it. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are in the most disorienting and most necessary passage that any human psyche goes through. And Carl Jung spent decades studying exactly this experience. He not only documented it, he mapped it, he gave it a name. And everything he found points to the same conclusion. What you are living right now is not the end of something. It is the passage into the best chapter of your life. But it does not feel that way from the inside. It cannot. And that is exactly the point. Jung noticed something that most psychologists in his era were determined to explain away. His patients who were genuinely changing, not adjusting their behavior or reframing their thoughts, but actually transforming at the level of who they fundamentally were, all passed through a period of profound disorientation first. Not mild discomfort, not growing pains, a genuine dissolution. The structures they had built their identity on stopped working. The things that had given them meaning started to feel empty. The roles they had played began to feel like costumes, and the more they tried to force the old life back into shape, the more exhausted and hollow they became. Jung did not pathologize this. He recognized it. He had encountered the same pattern in medieval alchemical texts, which he was studying not as historical curiosity, but as psychological maps. The alchemists, who were genuinely transforming their work, described a stage they called the Nigredo, the blackening, the dissolution of the original material into its component elements before something new could be formed. Jung recognized that the alchemists were not only describing a chemical process, they were describing what the human psyche goes through on the way to becoming more fully itself. He called it the Nigredo of the soul. To understand what the Nigredo actually is, you first need to understand what it is dissolving. Jung observed that every person constructs what he called the persona. The word comes from the Latin word for the masks worn by actors in ancient theatre, and that is precisely what it is, a mask, a carefully constructed identity assembled from everything the world around you rewarded and everything the world around you punished. The persona is not false exactly. It is functional. You needed it. The version of yourself that knew how to perform, how to belong, how to succeed in the environment you were raised in. That version of you served a purpose. It got you here. But at a certain point, and the timing is different for everyone, the psyche reaches its limit with the performance. Something deeper begins to assert itself, and the persona, which was never your actual face, begins to crack. This is the beginning of the Nigredo. It does not announce itself as transformation, it announces itself as loss. The loss of certainty, the loss of motivation, the loss of the identity that was holding everything together. The things you cared about stop making sense. The path that felt clear starts to feel like it belongs to someone else. Jung wrote that this experience is not a regression, it is a preparation. The psyche is not collapsing, it is clearing. There is a psychological principle Jung borrowed from the pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus that helps explain why this happens when it does. He called it enantiodromia, enanteodromia, the tendency of things to flip into their opposite when they reach their extreme. You have likely lived this without having a word for it. You push yourself further and further in a particular direction, work harder, become more certain, optimize more relentlessly, and then at some point, the very energy you were channeling flips. The drive becomes exhaustion. The certainty becomes doubt. The identity you built so carefully becomes the thing you can no longer stand to maintain. Jung saw this not as a failure of willpower. He saw it as the psyche correcting itself. Every dominant attitude reaches its maximum and then reverses because the unconscious carries everything the conscious position excluded. And when the exclusion becomes complete enough, what was excluded comes flooding back. The dissolution you are experiencing is enantiodromia in action. Your psyche has been pushed as far as it can go in one direction. The reversal is not a sign that you were wrong, it is a sign that you were committed. And now something that your previous life could not contain is beginning to emerge. What makes the Nigredo so disorienting is that it happens in the dark. There is a quality of depression to it. Not clinical depression necessarily, though Jung was careful to distinguish between the two, but a descent, a withdrawal of energy from the surface of life, a sense of being pulled inward against your will. Jung called this quality the via negativa, the path that moves through absence rather than presence, through unknowing rather than certainty, through stripping away rather than building up. The via negativa is not comfortable. It is not supposed to be. It is the necessary condition for something the ego alone cannot produce. Here is what Jung found. The psyche, when held in the tension of genuine dissolution, when you are willing to stay in the not knowing without forcing a premature resolution, begins to generate something new. Not a decision, not a plan, something that was not available to the old version of you, a new orientation, a new sense of what matters, a perspective that could only come from going through what you are going through. He called the function responsible for this the transcendent function. Not transcendent in a spiritual sense necessarily. Transcendent in the sense that it operates beyond what either the conscious or the unconscious could generate on its own. It emerges from the meeting of the two, and that meeting only happens in the dissolution. You cannot shortcut it. You cannot think your way to it. You can only move through it. Consider the kind of person who has spent 20 years building something, a career, a marriage, an identity organized around a particular role. They were good at it. They gave everything to it. And then, seemingly without warning, it stopped feeling like theirs. They go through the motions. They are still competent. People around them see no difference, but something on the inside has gone quiet in a way that frightens them. They wake at 3 in the morning, not with anxiety exactly, but with a kind of hollow attention, as if the psyche is searching for something it cannot name. They try the solutions they know. They work harder. They take a vacation. They start a new project. They read the books about purpose and meaning. None of it touches the thing that is actually happening, because the thing that is actually happening cannot be addressed by adding anything, only by allowing the dissolution to complete itself. When this person stops fighting the dissolution, something begins to shift, not dramatically, not all at once, but the quiet that felt like emptiness begins to feel like clearing. The withdrawal of energy from the old life begins to reveal what the old life had been blocking, and slowly, from underneath, a new direction begins to emerge, not as a decision they make, as a recognition of something that was always there, but had never had enough space to speak. That is the transcendent function operating. That is what the Nigredo was preparing. The question is not how to end the dissolution faster. The question is how to be in it without making it worse. Jung gave this a name too. He called it conscious suffering. Conscious suffering is not the same as simply hurting. Everyone who is in the Nigredo is hurting. Conscious suffering is the willingness to feel what is present without either collapsing under it or fleeing from it, without numbing, without forcing resolution, without making the discomfort mean more than it means. It is the practice of staying with your own experience, fully, without the performance of being fine and without the drama of catastrophe. Jung believed conscious suffering was the single most accelerating factor in genuine psychological transformation, not because pain is useful in itself, but because the willingness to feel fully, to stay present with the dissolution rather than escape it, is the condition under which the transcendent function can operate. Here is how to work with it. Each day, for 10 minutes, sit with what is actually present in you. Not what you wish was present, not what you think should be present. What is actually there. Let it be as heavy as it is. Let it be as confusing as it is. Do not try to understand it or resolve it or turn it into a lesson yet. Then write one sentence, just one, that begins with the words, "What I am not willing to lose is," not what you want to gain, what you are not willing to lose. Because underneath the dissolution, that sentence will begin to locate the core of the self that the Nigredo is clearing space for, the thing that has always been true, the thing the old life was built around, and also in some ways built on top of. Do this every day for 30 days. The sentence will change, it will deepen, and somewhere in that sequence of sentences, the new direction will begin to find its shape. Carl Jung survived his own Nigredo. Between 1913 and 1919, following his break with Freud, he lost almost everything he had built his professional identity on: his reputation, his certainty, his sense of direction. He descended into what he later described as a confrontation with his own unconscious so total that he genuinely feared for his sanity. What came out of that period was everything: the theory of archetypes, the collective unconscious, the process of individuation, the Red Book, his entire mature body of work. He did not know, in the middle of the dissolution, what he was being prepared for. He only knew that something in him refused to stop, and that refusal, held in full conscious awareness of how lost he was, turned out to be enough. What you are in right now is not a detour from the best chapter of your life. It is the passage into it, the clearing of everything that cannot come with you, the dissolution of the identity that was built for where you have been rather than where you are going. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are in the Nigredo. And the Nigredo always precedes the dawn. Drop the word dissolving in the comments if this found you at the right time. You do not need to say anything else. And if someone in your life is in this same passage right now, not visibly falling apart but quietly hollow in a way they cannot explain, send this to them. Sometimes the most important thing is simply having a name for what you are already in.